Today is a Wednesday, January 29, 2025. Trump's federal grant freeze, a risky political gamble that threatens U.S. economic stability. A controversial memo sends shockwaves through the economy. In a dramatic move that has sent tremors through the U.S. economy, the Trump administration issued a directive on Monday to suspend hundreds of billions of dollars in federal grants and loans. The decision, outlined in a two-page memo from the acting director of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, has ignited controversy due to its overt political rhetoric and sweeping implications. The memo explicitly states that federal funds should align with Trump administration priorities and focus on ending wokeness. It criticizes the use of federal money for what it describes as Marxist equity, transgenderism, and Green New Deal social engineering policies. The directive calls for an immediate suspension of federal disbursements while the administration conducts a review, leaving many organizations reliant on government funding in limbo. Immediate impact on key sectors. The repercussions of this abrupt policy shift are already being felt across various sectors. Critical programs that provide essential medical services, emergency aid for farmers, cancer center funding, and even burial assistance for veterans with no next of kin have been thrown into uncertainty. Reports from CNN indicate that agencies are scrambling to determine the extent of the freeze, with some essential services at risk of losing financial support. The directive's vague wording has only added to the confusion, leaving state and local governments, healthcare providers, and nonprofit organizations unsure of whether their funding is secure. By Tuesday evening, a federal judge had temporarily blocked part of the freeze, but the legal battle and economic uncertainty continue. A legal and economic powder keg. Legal experts argue that Trump's attempt to unilaterally halt federal spending is likely unconstitutional. According to Samuel Bagenstoes, a law professor at the University of Michigan and former general counsel for the OMB, the executive branch can only delay spending appropriated funds for certain reasons, and none of those reasons include the president disagreeing with the policy underlying the appropriation. Economists warn that if the funding freeze persists, it could severely disrupt the U.S. economy, potentially undoing years of steady growth. Over the past 4 years, the economy has remained surprisingly resilient despite inflation spikes and high interest rates. However, the sudden withdrawal of billions in federal funds could destabilize labor markets, halt key projects, and shake consumer confidence. A political power play with dangerous consequences. Trump's decision appears to be a strategic effort to wrest control over federal spending from Congress. However, this gamble risks economic turmoil at a time when the economy has been defying expectations. Inflation is largely under control, interest rates are stabilizing, and consumer spending has fueled consecutive quarters of solid GDP growth. All of that could change if thousands of federally funded jobs vanish overnight and businesses lose trust in the government's ability to meet its obligations. Wendy Adelberg, director of the Hamilton Project and a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, cautioned that the economic consequences could range from minor disruptions to full-scale crises, depending on the duration of the freeze. If it is a one-week thing, it's just another handful of straw on the camel's back. But if we get to week 5, I will be screaming, in a hair-on-fire panic, not just about the economy, but about the state of our country. More than just a government shutdown. While Trump officials attempted to downplay the panic by claiming that the memorandum is not a blanket pause on all federal programs, only those aligned with Democratic priorities, the message has only created further uncertainty. Medicaid, for example, was reportedly not included in the freeze, yet several state Medicaid agencies have already lost access to crucial funds needed to pay hospitals and health care providers. Brendan Duke, a senior director for economic policy at the Center for American Progress, likened the move to a government shutdown, only worse. This is essentially a unilateral partial federal government shutdown by the president, he said. Unlike traditional shutdowns caused by congressional gridlock over budget negotiations, this grant freeze affects mandatory spending that has already been approved by Congress. This isn't part of the government shutdown playbook, Adelberg added. We have no precedent for a scenario where the program that funds children's health insurance is suddenly cut off. This is uncharted territory. The uncertain road ahead. The full impact of Trump's grant freeze is difficult to quantify without knowing which programs will be affected and for how long. However, the economic consequences are unlikely to remain isolated to government-funded entities. Economies function as complex networks, and disruptions to one sector inevitably create ripple effects across industries and communities. Zach Mabel, Director of Research at the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce, warned of the broader risks. It is foolish to assume that the economy will be resilient regardless of what sorts of policies are being championed. We're testing how stress-resistant our economy and labor market really is, but this is a dangerous experiment. To say that we're playing with fire is an understatement. Conclusion. Trump's unprecedented decision to freeze federal grant funding introduces a volatile element into an economy that has, until now, remained remarkably strong. The legal challenges and economic uncertainty surrounding the move will likely dominate political and financial discussions in the coming weeks. As experts and analysts continue to assess the potential fallout, one thing is clear: the stakes have never been higher. Thanks for watching and subscribing to the channel.